this morning here on the program as we continue to talk about a real hot issue within the Indiana Area School District, and that is the plans for the elementary school reconfiguration. The school board has proposed and has approved a $32.2 million plan. That doesn't mean that it's final, though, and Mr. Schroth has been one of those who has been concerned about that. He's a member of the school board. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd. How are you this morning?
Wonderful. Good to have you with us here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You, a few weeks ago, introduced an alternative plan that seemed to get some very positive comments, even from people who have approved the more extensive plan. Tell me the difference in that plan from the one that is approved. Obviously, there are major differences, and how it was that you came to some of the figures and to actually putting this plan together.
Well, let me first start out by saying, Todd, that the what's proposed is a $32.2 million solution to whatever problems that the district has. And part of the issue I have in Problem Solving 101 is to identify the problems. So basically, I went back to the documents that the board had produced either through some of the engineering companies, the Buildings and Grounds Committee, Academic Committee, and tried to figure out what the problems actually were. I came up with a really $5 to $7 million worth of problems, at least from a building and structural point of view. Some of those things were identified even before the ESCO project. The ESCO, as you may recall, limited where we could spend the money. We primarily were focused on energy savings, including insulating the roofs and putting some new roof systems on. There were some drain issues at about a little over $500,000. Some electrical issues at around $300,000. There were some capacity issues at Ben Franklin. And so when I went through all that, I said, okay, what is it that we actually need to fix so that in the next 10 to 15 years, our buildings will be in good shape and we will be totally debt-free? Mm-hmm. So I took all of the information that had been produced and made public through the board and its committees, and using the numbers of the architects and the engineers, went back and identified the critical issues that needed to be worked on. And that's where I came up with the $5 to $7 million worth of problems.
Having said all that, your problem or your solution really deals with making the school district more fiscally viable before moving on to something more extensive. Would I be correct to put it that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, if we go through with the entire project, the $32 million, we're looking at about $9 million worth of interest that we will be paying before we begin to pay down the principal on this project. And there'll be another $4.5 million in interest that we will pay, just like you'd pay in a normal mortgage, as we begin to pay it off. Those are dollars, I think, in this tight budget, in where we are today, need to be spent elsewhere. When you add all that up, including the monies that were spent on the ESCO, you're somewhere north of $50 million. That's a huge amount of money to take out of this community, given the reassessment, given the issues with the Act 1 index and our rising costs. I'm not so sure that it's sustainable at this point. And one last point on that is that I think we need to be looking everywhere we can to reduce our expenditures. At last night's academic committee meeting, they were looking at the possibility of reducing our elementary staff by 3 teachers and another 2 teachers, one of which would come out of the elementary system. If we're going to eliminate teachers, we need to be looking at the possibility of eliminating this new building and reducing those costs. I have some real quick figures on that. The average, as I understand it, the average value of a house on the assessment in the district is $173,000. That average would pay about $2,600 a year in school taxes. In 10 years, at a 3% increase, which is what the board is forecasting, increasing our taxes at 3% every year for the next 10 years. They would then be paying $3,400. 10 years after that, it would be $4,600. That is not sustainable.
Some of the school board members who are on the side of building the new schools say that if you don't build them now, or if you don't revamp East Pike and build a brand new Ben Franklin, you don't shut down the other schools, the cost is going to be much, much steeper down the road to build what you could build now. How do you respond to something like that?
Sure. One of the arguments that they're making at this point is that your interest rate is historically at a low level. And that is true. However, when you look at the value of money, the time value of money, how you actually look at the time value, you're much better off paying a higher interest rate over a shorter period than you are a lower interest rate over a longer period. The bottom line is that while you may pay a higher interest rate later, you're going to actually cost the taxpayers less dollars in the end.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to project what interest rates will be down the road.
And it's difficult to do that, correct.
As you looked at the engineering problems or the engineering studies and the various problems that you identified, was there consideration in your plan given to the overall idea of larger classrooms, smaller classrooms, those educational values, accommodations for new technology, and viability of the buildings, just in terms of making them modern?
Well, that's about 5 questions there, but let me try to take them one at a time.
I'll take a walk then. You go ahead.
Okay. As far as the classroom size, yes, there is a significant difference between the classrooms right now at Ben Franklin and at East Pike. The problem is that the current proposal is not going to increase significantly the class size at Ben Franklin. They're still going to be smaller than they are at East Pike. The other issue that is involved in this is that the Ben Franklin building is at very close to its capacity. So any additional growth in that area, which is the area of town that is growing, we're going to be out of capacity. So what I proposed in my plan was to build a 10,000 square foot addition to Ben Franklin. Primarily, that would amount to about 8 classrooms at 1,000 square foot per classroom, and focusing on pre-K and the kindergarten and building modern kindergarten facilities to alleviate the capacity issue, and more importantly, provide that extra space for the kindergarten, which is, if you get them off to a good start in the kindergarten, first grade, you're much better off with the students than you are waiting till later on. It does not resolve all of these space issues, but that certainly was my approach to it. And as far as the modernity of the whole process, right now in education, we are looking at changes. Since I've been on the board, the way we deliver our education system has changed dramatically, and that's only been in the last 10 years. In the next 10 years, I expect it to change as dramatically as it has, or more so, in the last 10. By not building it now, by waiting till then, we will have a better idea of how the best way to deliver that system for the benefit of our students. That's the other academic reason for waiting.
As this has all unfolded, and for a good bit of this whole debate, there have been 2 sides. Keep the schools the way they are. Build the new project. Your plan, would you characterize your plan as being a third option that the school board should give serious consideration to?
What would be the second option? And I didn't quite follow, Todd, what you're getting.
Well, from the start, it's been, no, let's keep them the way that they are.
Yes.
And let's build the new one. Now, your plan comes in, maybe yours is just a refinement of that let's keep them the way they are argument.
What it is when we did the ESCO, there were some additional issues that needed to be dealt with. I mentioned the drains, I mentioned the electrical, I mentioned the capacity at Ben Franklin and some things like that. Mm-hmm. What my plan does is sustains those 4 buildings for the next 10 to 15 years. So it really supports that side of the proposal of maintaining the 4 buildings, but it does so to resolve the issues that need to be dealt with over the next 10 to 15 years.
The timing of all of this has been an issue as well, and the feeling by many of the folks at school board meetings from the public who have attended and those who have signed petitions and such, that it's just going too fast, and we're trying to put brakes on it, according to some. Just slow it down by putting the brakes on. Many people would love to just stop the whole process. How do you feel about that whole thing with upcoming elections and school boards? The idea of spending money and getting yourself to a situation where once it's spent, you can't stop.
There is a sense that is the ultimately driving force behind the tempo. I would say that there were 3 issues that are behind that. Number one was a potential change of the board and how the new board may, in fact, not approve of this new building. Number 2 is House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76 were some version of the a school tax elimination, rejuvenation, whatever the legislature finally does. The reason that's possibly a driving force is because the debt that school districts incur will probably be retained by the local taxpayers. So if they get the debt in before that gets put into law, then our district taxpayers will still be responsible for that debt. Mm-hmm. And the third issue is the plan con in the sense of trying to get involved in a system that may actually be eliminated in the future.
Okay. All of those are considerations, and this will continue to unfold over the coming months, and we'll certainly have our eyes on it. Walter, thank you so much for coming in.
Todd, it's my pleasure. The only final thought that I would leave you with is that I'm amazed at the amount of resistance, both public and the various governmental entities, and the inability of this board to respond to that resistance.
He is Walter Schroth, Indiana School Board member, and it is Indiana in the Morning, presented as always by First Commonwealth Bank here on AM 1160 WCCS and 101.1 FM. Fox News up next at the top of the hour. We're there right now.